This is episode 46 of the Voices of Boyle, and I'm delighted to have Mary Lavin as our guest for it. As most of you will know, Mary works in King House as an excellent tour guide and receptionist for the past number of years. Hailing from County Galway, Mary goes back and she shares how her deep love for historical sites was cultivated. We talked about the history of King House from its beginnings in the 1730s as the King family's grand home to its time as a military barracks and now as a cultural heritage centre. Mary also talks about the treasures within King House, including the Mary McAlese collection, Maureen O'Sullivan artefacts, and the Boyle Civic Arts Collection. So grab yourself a cuppa, as this episode is a must-listen for anyone that's interested in the rich history and culture of Boyle. Mary, you're welcome to the Voices of Boyle. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Carlo, for inviting me.
Mary, we've not had anyone specifically on the podcast that's talked about King House, so that's what you're going to be chatting to us today about. But before all that, give us a little introduction to Mary Lavin, where you were born, where you grew up. How did you end up in Boyle?
Carlo, I'm a blow into Boyle, actually. I'm from a place called Ballymoe, County Galway, which is 22 miles from here. And I'm one of five in a family. I was born and raised in business. My father and mother owned the shop in the centre of Ballymoe, grocery, petrol station. My father, John Connaughton, was the local butcher, and of course the antique shop.
So Mary, growing up in Ballymoe back in those days, have you any fond memories or even family traditions that live on fondly in your memory?
Well, growing up in the shop in Ballymoe was a great asset to me because from a young age we were exposed to a throughput of people, and it was there I developed my great history knowledge with, of course, the antique shop. Customers calling, restoring old period houses, hotels, just generally enjoying the history of the antiques, and the exposure that I found from that developed a deep knowledge of history in my mind. And of course, we had lived in a lovely community. 5 shops in Ballymoe at the time, a Garda station, a church, Catholic and Protestant, and went to the local national school, and from there to school in Castlerea, and developed a great insight into country living in a small village.
Yeah. So obviously the antique shop, that's kind of instilled in you then your maybe love for history, as we get into in a little bit about working in King House, for example, how you maybe have an affinity to history in a way.
Certainly. It was there that my love of history started, I suppose, when I saw, I encountered all these people coming in, various Irish, English, all over the world coming in, but more importantly, people restoring historic houses and hotels, as I've already mentioned, and getting the history on why they wanted to buy this piece and the history that was attached to it. And of course, going with my father at the time to the auctions and packing all the stuff when we came home to Ballymoe and looking in awe at its magnificence and the beautiful workmanship that went into a lot of the furniture and all that. And from there, it was actually there I developed my deep love for historic houses and buildings and antique furniture. And
yeah. Okay, so Boyle, when and why?
Well, I fell in love with Mary Lavin. He is a local. Mary Lavin is from Ballymore on the French Park Road. He comes from a renowned farming family. So we married in 1987, and he originally his mum and dad had bought a land with a period house on it in the 50s. So George and I embarked upon restoring this house. And again, the knowledge I'd received from Ballymoe, plus further research, we restored back the period house to its former Georgian glory and Ballymore House. So I suppose that's really where all that stemmed from.
So from Ballymoe to
Ballymore.
To Ballymore, right, okay. And so you've been in Boyle then, so what year did you...
1987.
And you married in 1987 and you moved there in 1987.
Correct.
And you've been here ever since.
I've been here ever since, 37 years this year.
From someone that moved to Boyle, later on in life, but you didn't grow up in Boyle. What was Boyle like for you back in those days?
From day one, I was totally impressed with Boyle, with the historic buildings, the beautiful stone walls, the lovely community, the cross-section of people that we have living in Boyle, and Lockheed Forest Park, known originally as Rockingham, the Boyle Abbey, King House, the gym in the middle of the whole lot, and having frequented King House regularly with my children, the piano exams and the cultural events which I attended with my husband and children, it gave me a great love for this town. I found it was a unique experience, and I grew more and more fond of this town and love it to this day.
Yeah. And back in the 80s as well, Boyle was a very bustling, busy trade town, more so than it is obviously now.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So you would have witnessed that obviously in its heyday. Boyle in the 80s was a very thriving town compared to nowadays.
Certainly. Boyle, you could get anything. When I arrived in Boyle, from a needle to an anchor, I didn't have to leave the town to get it. And even in this, certainly even in today, we have 3 beautiful ladies' shops and a gents' shop in Boyle. We have lovely shoe shops, and I still can access quite a bit in Boyle, but unfortunately not the town that I came into in 1987 from a business perspective.
Yeah, it's declined, but look, it has a lot of towns in Ireland, I suppose, have gone down the same path. Unfortunately, we can just hope that in the future we get back on our feet.
Well, we are developing that, and I read recently, actually only this morning, in the Boyle town team are developing putting in all their energies to continue to develop Boyle, and as we can see, which is quite evident, with the new pathways and the painting of the town and the development generally, it's great to see the energy that these people put into it for us as a community and to expose this to the visitors that come into our town.
Yeah, the new footpaths are a bit of a touchy subject at the moment in the town, but we leave that for another day.
Well, of course, you can't make an omelette without breaking the eggs, so we have to just be patient, and hopefully we'll enjoy it in the not too distant future.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on then to where you currently work. Is it part-time?
Yes, my role is part-time.
And so just most people would know you, well, I would have known you from being a tour guide and the receptionist in King House, which is your role and one that you're extremely good at.
Well, thank you, Carlo.
So your role is as a tour guide in King House. So for tourists that come, that book tours, you're the one, when you're working, of course, to bring them along on this tour of King House. So can you maybe provide us with a brief overview of the history of King House and its significance in Boyle's heritage?
In 2016, I saw the advertisement on the local paper where they were looking for tour guides and receptionists in King House. And I said, you know what? I have a great interest in that. I'm going to apply for it. And I was gladly given one of the first selections in it. So I started in 2016, which is 8 years ago this year. And I've loved every minute working there. I love showcasing King House. And I feel a great affinity with it, the warmth when I go in. I feel great energy while I'm in there. Just to give you a little bit of history on King House. King House was built between 1720 and 1730 by a man called Sir Henry King, who was a descendant of John King. Just to give you a little background on John King. John King came to Ireland from Yorkshire in England in 1603. He was awarded by Queen Elizabeth I the deeds to the Boyle Abbey, which had been in the hands of the Cistercian monks, and the lands of the MacDermots. They were the custodians of the land, totaling 4,127 acres of land. I tell my guests when they come into King House, my own immediate family, and I suppose the Boyle people, what John King said, because I feel it's very important to reiterate John's concept of Boyle when he came into it. He said, "I am John King, your most humble servant. I came here with Elizabeth's armies to suppress the enemy. All diligence was used to impose martial law in this remote and savage place." So then, going on from that, in 1730 then, King House was built by Sir Henry King, his descendant. And the family only lived there for just less than 50 years, shy of 50 years, about 48 years. And while they were there, they had a palatial lifestyle. They had 35 people working for them, chefs, coach drivers, butlers, gamekeepers, office staff, personal assistants, you name it, they had it. But after 8 years, they decided enough is enough. So they abandoned the house and they moved out to Rockingham. Now, the reason why they abandoned this beautiful Georgian house was they thought the house was too small. 40 rooms, 35 fireplaces, too small. It wasn't enough of an image of their wealth, and it was a townhouse. So they moved out to Rockingham and the house was abandoned. After 3 years, the War Office in London bought it for 3,000 sterling. Ideal location for an army barracks. The regiment that was billeted there was the Connaught Rangers. They were there from 1788 until 1922. The young recruits, 14 years of age, 5 feet in height and grown, trained in Boyle and went on for further training to the barracks in Rinmore, County Galway, and out to war. In 1922, the Irish Army moved in until the early 50s. And then local people used the house for selling fuel supplies. And then in the late 60s, 70s, and nothing happened in the house. The roof caved in, the windows smashed, trees grew up, ivy hung on the wall. So in 1987, Roscommon County Council took a visit to Boyle and they looked at this building, in its dire-looking building. So they decided to buy it, knock it, and make a car park for Boyle. Sent out the tenders, but 3 days before the project was to begin, a contingent went up from Boyle and pleaded with the county manager and the committee not to destroy their beautiful building. So they changed their mind. The county manager at the time was Donald Connolly from Waterford. Changed their mind and moved in 1989 and started to restore the building. 26 loads of rubbish was first taken out before they could even begin to know what will we do with this building. Part of the roof had asbestos had to be removed, so it was a huge project. But they employed the best of architects, engineers, interior designers, decorators, opened the building to the public in 1995.
So that's interesting that originally John King had owned the abbey, you said, back in the early 1600s.
1603, he came into Boyle.
Right. And
with the deeds to the Boyle Abbey in his saddlebag.
And he would have been given that from the crown?
Granted that by Queen Elizabeth I for his services to the crown in the army.
Right. And I'd say a lot of, back in those days, the Queen had granted, I think there's a word, isn't there? It's called ascendancy,
the rise of the ascendancy. So that period was known as the rise of the ascendancy.
So people of power and nobility were given
awarded those lands
in Ireland
for their services to the crown. The rootlessness obviously to the crown.
And so and then they obviously moved out to Rockingham, and I think their reign then, would it be fair to say that the reign of the King family in Boyle came to an end when Rockingham House burnt in 1957, I believe. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, just to give you a little background on that, the King family moved out and they lived first in Kingston Hall. And then in 1807, they employed the great architect John Nash, who'd already designed Buckingham Palace and period houses of significance. and embarked upon building the house in 1807 and completed in 1817 at a cost of £52,000. The family lived there. Of course, they had a house and a beautiful winding avenue up to the house, 3 tunnels running into the house, the mouth of the tunnel out to the lake wider. That was for taking in cargo. They had their servants, their butlers. I hear great stories during the Arts Festival in Boyle, and I believe in one situation the local girl was telling me her grandfather was a postman there, and when he went through the tunnel, the servant girl stood there with a silver tray, and the mail was put on the silver tray. He delivered the mail and distributed to the relevant people in the house. But in 1957, while the family were at the Doncaster horse sales in England, the house went on fire.
That's right, yeah.
5 fire brigades fought the fire. People went in at their own risk, wrenched the pictures off the wall, chains and all. They got stones, smashed the cabinet doors to take out the beautiful china that was inside. We have pieces throughout King House that was donated by the King family that was rescued from the house on the night. The house was... that was in 1957. In 1955, the Land Commission took over the estate and divided it up into parcels of land and small built houses on it, and relocated people from Ireland, the rest of Ireland, in Mayo and in Meath. And the house then was, after much deliberation, argument and protest, the house was pulled down in September 1971.
That's right. And wouldn't it have been fantastic if we had the foresight back then to do like we did with King House and prevent that from happening, even keep it as a shell until funds were available, even decades later?
Of course, it was short-sightedness, and there was a lot of sensitivity in that area. Now, we have to allow and respect that fact too, that it was a sensitive area relating to our history. But for us, the people of Boyle, it would be the crown glory to have Rockingham House now restored to a beautiful hotel. So it was short-sightedness, because we have to remember it was Irish people that built those houses. I know it was Irish money as well, coming from the rent from their lands and all that. But short-sightedness, I would put it down to, really, and lack of vision.
Yeah. And when they were doing the restoration when they started the restoration of King House back in 1987, were there any kind of old artefacts or pieces, relics that were preserved, and are they still in King House today? I presume there's a lot of them, but
no. The house was in a ruinous state. There really was nothing of value, only a lot of rubbish, and 26 loads of rubbish, as I said, had to be taken out. So really there was nothing of value that they could bring forward with them and put on display in today's terms. No, there was nothing left.
And Mary, could you tell us a little bit more about the various roles that King House has played over its 300-year history, from being a family home to a military barracks and to its current use?
King House has been a family home and a military barracks for over 100 years. Then the Irish Army occupied it for 50 years. Then we have the restored building, gratefully done by Roscommon County Council, who completed the project in 1995. So now it's a tourist attraction. The house plays host to musical, dramatic and cultural events, and is the central location for the ever-popular Boyle Arts Festival. We have the Mary McAlese collection in King House, our former president, 86 pieces given to her while in office, and Roscommon County Council tendered for them and got them. So we have the 86 pieces at our disposal and rotate them, and they're very well liked and admired. We have the jail cells. We have the Maureen O'Sullivan Museum. Maureen was born to an officer in King House, Charles J. O'Sullivan from Cork in 1911. And 3 days after she was born, her father got an overseas appointment. So she was then taken by her grandfather, who was reared her out in Riversdale House. And when she was 12, she went to boarding school, and then she went to finishing college in Rockhampton outside London. Her best friend was Vivian Leigh, Gone with the Wind. We all remember her from that famous film. And then she embarked upon some charity work. And while she was in the RDS one night at a charity ball, she was spotted by an American film producer, saw her good looks, and asked her to come for a screenshot. Whipped her out to Hollywood, and she was most famous for Jane and Tarzan, Eileen O'Brien's Song of My Heart. She was the face of Max Factor, the face for Camel Cigars. Oh, I could go on, but we have a wonderful museum in level 2 in the auditorium in King House, and well admired, and there for everybody to come and visit. We have the Hidden Gym then downstairs. It's another museum. Edwin Springburn, German jeweller, and he created great works of art. No two pieces of jewellery were commissioned the same. Each one was relative to your personal liking. So when he died, his wife Doris was adamant that his works and his workshop and his beautiful jewellery, part of his collection, would go up on display. So the Roscommon County Council embarked upon that 5 years ago. So we have the beautiful museum, the Hidden Gym, on the ground floor. The Connaught Rangers Museum, of course, the ever popular Connaught Rangers Museum, is on the first floor. Very well admired. People come there. There's a lot of tears and a lot of gladness. People find portraits or photographs or memorabilia attached to a loved one. And we're glad to be able to expose this to them. And it's very well admired, and people come from far and near to visit the Connaught Rangers Museum.
Yeah, because there was a rumour a few years ago, remember, that the Connaught Rangers exhibition was going to be moved over to somewhere in Galway. I don't know if you remember that or not. There was some sort of a rumour anyway.
There was a rumour. But in actual fact, I think that the Connaught Rangers today is more, visual, and a lot of memorabilia is still there. And I think in 2024, the year we're in, we needed to upgrade it and update it and bring it up to modern day standards of a museum.
Yeah. And you spoke there briefly about the Mary McAlese collection.
Correct.
That you have all her 86 gifts, I believe.
86, yeah. Correct, yes.
And what are some of those gifts, just to give listeners a kind of an idea of, like, is there ones that are standoutish compared to others, or?
Well, they're all significant and related to the country that they were given from. But mine in particular, I love Yasser Arafat, a beautiful display of the Last Supper. It's the mother of pearl, the year 2000, and surrounded by the abalone shell. That's very well admired, as is all of the pieces. The jade stone from China certainly is of great significance and very well admired. The Black Panther from Nigeria, the beautiful coffee pot from Bahrain, the beautiful display of the opal and the pearl gifted to her from Australia, the amber stone from Poland, and the beautiful picture of the Glentoran Football Club in County Antrim and the Hartleton Wolf shipyards in the background. And lots of pieces. I'm just relating what I see at the moment we have on display, but as they come forward, there's, as I said, 86 pieces, so we rotate them, and they're all very interesting. Actually, of late, what we noticed was the piece gifted to Mary McAlese from Saudi Arabia. But of late it was drawn to our attention that the actual piece that was gifted was to Martin, her husband, not to Mary, because we all know where they hold women in their
place in society
in
over
society
there. Yes.
in that country.
She wouldn't have received too many gifts there.
No, and not as a female.
No. So Maureen O'Sullivan, you touched on that as well. You came to Boyle in 1987.
Correct, yes.
Maureen O'Sullivan came back to Boyle in 1988.
Correct.
You would have remembered that occasion, I presume.
I did. Maureen O'Sullivan came back to Boyle, visited Boyle with her husband James Cushins. She had married him secondly. Her first husband was John Farrow, who was an Australian film producer. And we all remember her daughter, Mia Farrow,
that's right.
who was married to Dougie Allen.
Oh, okay. He was a bit of a controversial figure, wasn't he?
Woody Allen.
Woody Allen, that's correct.
And Maureen then, with her second husband, came back in 1988. There was huge celebrations in Boyle. She revisited Riversdale House, and as John Burke told me the story, I had a little chat about him. He said that when she came into the house, she related to each room as if she had never left there. Each room, she identified it as from her childhood. They had a mass in St. Joseph's Church in Boyle, a huge gathering there. She had celebrations on Main Street where there was a plaque unveiled in her memory on 3 doors down from King House on the Sheardon store.
Where she was born, yeah.
Where she was born. And a tree planted across the road from King House in her memory. She planted a coin in the base and took some leaves with her off the tree back with her to Hollywood.
And that tree is obviously still growing?
Still there in her memory. We're delighted to point that out to tourists, and it's a great tourist attraction for Boyle as well.
One thing of King House I hear a lot about is the long gallery.
Correct.
And it seems to be a pretty remarkable feature of King House. Can you describe its significance and any interesting stories or events that are associated with it?
The Long Gallery, it's the introduction to the house. It's 116 foot long or 35 metres. This was to create an impression on you when you came in. People arrived at the foot of the steps in their horse-drawn carriages and were brought up and in through the front door with 2 fires lit. And the servant girl and the butler walking around with their silver trays, distributing hot port. And you can imagine the feeling when they arrived up. The twin fireplaces, just to give you a little background, and one of the original fireplaces in the house was bought by Desmond Guinness when the King family fell on hard times, and they sold that fireplace to Desmond Guinness. And when they were restoring the house, they did some research work and the fireplace was recovered. I'm sure there was some monetary or some financial gain for the Guinness family, and the Feely Stone here in Boyle, who were the major contractors on the house at the time, restored it because it came back in 2 different pieces. But to the visual eye now, today, that's not evident. So the original floor of the house is still there, from 1730, and the front door is original, painted many times. The Boyle Civic Arts Collection, over 300 pieces. That's on display. The Roscommon County Council are the custodians of it, and it's on display throughout the year. So the Long Gallery, of course, lends itself to the display of that art, and upstairs and downstairs we display the art. But it gets well showcased in the Long Gallery and very well admired. And we have booklets to...
Showcase it? Yeah, lovely. And wasn't there a fire in the 1700s in King House that destroyed? I think there was a fire of some sort that destroyed the house, I think. I'm not sure. Well,
we're led to believe there was a fire there was an original house between the Boyle Abbey and the present day King House, that there was a fire in a house there and destroyed it. But that's the only evidence I have of fires. But as you know, with 35 fireplaces currently, while they lived there and walking around with candlelit, they were always exposed to fire, and they stored most of their fuel supplies in the basements of the houses. So you had a full exposure to fire at any time,
and that was the only recorded
evidence
fire during its history from when it was built in 1730, you said?
Yes, 1730.
Yeah, that was the only record, and it mightn't have even been in that building, is that correct?
No, we're led to believe it was in a house that was built between King House and the Boyle Abbey.
Okay.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Now, I just want to reiterate as well, when the Connaught Rangers took over the occupancy of King House, the Connaught Rangers, they that built the round walls, the circular walls around King House. And the face of King House significantly changed. The beautiful dining room that you see in King House today, that became their gymnasium. And there was a ball alley in the courtyard. And on a wet day, when the young recruits drilled up and down the long gallery in King House, that was on a wet day.
Okay. And so you don't remember, obviously, but the Boyle barracks breakout of June 1921, where they escaped, was it Michael Dockery, I think, and Malloy, Jim Malloy?
Matt Malloy, yes, Matt Malloy's father.
It was his father.
Yes.
But it wasn't, it was Jim Malloy, I think was the name.
Correct.
Yeah. So that was a big, back in the, obviously the Connaught Rangers era, wasn't it? I think, wasn't it it was 1921?
It was after the occupancy of the Connaught Rangers disbanded completely in July 1922. So it was during the reign then when we had the transition period between the Connaught Rangers being there and our own turmoil that went on in this country here, where we had unrest, civil unrest. So we had people were ordinary civilians were arrested and put into the jail cells in King House for no light on your bicycle, unpaid debt, or intoxicated.
No light in the bike was harsh, wasn't it?
No, it's a harsh penalty. So you were put in there to put manners on you. And when we had, relating to what you said, in that period of time, we had 2 escapes. And what happened was the buildings, as you are evident there today, looking out onto the Boyle River, the role in the morning was of the inmates. They were called out to the corridor to have their wash. But some of the good men outside that had got information had cut the bars in the window that were exposed to the Boyle River. And one of the men, in particular, Jim
Malloy,
mm-hmm. They had cut the bars. So Jim escaped down out through the window, dropped down into the Boyle River, across into the pleasure grounds. He was quickly gathered up and brought into hiding. There was a riot took place. The officers at the time couldn't believe what had happened, and they scoured the country looking for him. But I believe, and I'm told, they never found him because he was hidden in a reek of turf. Now, in 2016, Barry Feely did a great exposure in King House in charcoal of that period of history, and Matt Malloy himself came and opened that exhibition. And he said, I would not be here tonight to open this exhibition only for the escape of my father in 1922. So I'm honoured to be here tonight in his memory.
And wasn't it Corporal George Meade Larkin that was a prison officer? He left the door. He was the one that kind of initiated the whole escape to allow them to allow the Malloy and Doctor to escape. So he was obviously British military himself, Meade Larkin. So what was in it for him to do that, to let the 2 young Irish bucks out?
Well, I believe he was going out with a local girl down in a shop down the street. And of course, information passed over and back. That's my belief.
Right.
So therefore, that probably will answer that question.
Okay. The pleasure grounds. The pleasure grounds were, I believe, created as a recreational area for the gentry of King House back in the day. That's a fair assumption?
Well, correct. And the ladies would have strolled through the pleasure grounds and reading their books, maybe out there in a garden seat, admiring the beautiful flowers and the hedgerows. And then, of course, it became too small for them. So when they moved out to Rockingham, they certainly had great gardens at their disposal.
When visitors come inside King House today, are there any specific exhibits or artefacts that are particularly popular or significant? I know we talked about the Long Gallery, but is there any other exhibition that's really a standout that you get a lot of maybe questions about? Like, would it be maybe the Connacht Rangers exhibition, the Maureen O'Sullivan, which...
Correct. People come from all different backgrounds, but generally speaking, there's great admiration for the Mary McAlese collection. Maureen O'Sullivan, of course, is greatly admired. The Connacht Rangers, people come from far and near to see that alone in some cases, but then the house tour is included in that, and they have great admiration for the background that's associated with the house. The Hidden Gem now is a new extra, which we have an additive, and that's highly admired. So, generally speaking, and the Boyle Civic Arts Collection, over 300 pieces, that's very well admired.
Yeah.
And of course, we have the highlight of the whole lot. Then we have the Boyle Arts Festival, which takes place over a 10-day period, and King House plays host is to that festival. And I suppose in any one day, you could have up to 1,000 people going through King House.
That's
that period of history.
And Mary, what would your favourite aspect of King House be if you had to pick one thing that you personally either work in there or if you were a visitor? What would that be for you?
I cannot really pick out one thing over the other. I think my admiration for Roscommon County Council to have the vision and give this house back to us, the people of Boyle, that we now have some beautiful Georgian building to expose to the public and to promote and to display. And my energies run wild in doing this great work that I do, that some days I never even look at my watch for my lunch break because I think there's so much grandeur attached to it. And each room has its own significance and has its own history. My dining room in King House is my favourite.
Okay.
I just get that beautiful warm feeling when I walk into it. And of course, it is a warm room with 3 south-facing windows and it overlooking the pleasure grounds. So I suppose...
That's your favourite room? Right, okay. And can you share any anecdotes or lesser-known facts about King House that visitors might find intriguing?
I think actually looking up King House online and getting information on it outside of King House is not of true value. I think you have actually to come in person to King House to enjoy and to embrace the beautiful house. People go on tour and they say, how long will this tour take? And I said, well, 300 years of history in 1 hour. Are you ready for it? But maybe 3 hours later, I've people coming back down to reception and saying, oh, this is such a hidden gem. We're so glad we came to this house. We cannot believe the magnificence and the history and the museums. We certainly will be promoting this and encouraging people to come and visit this beautiful house, Boyle, County Roscommon.
Obviously, we also have the courtyard, which has the King House tea rooms. We have the Unawan craft shop. I believe is that changed now to Discover Boyle, or is that how? Because I get confused sometimes with Unawan. Isn't it Discover Boyle they've rebranded to, I think? Yes,
Unawan, of course, we all relate to this, the Unawan shop, but now it's under a new branding, Discover Ireland. We have a wonderful team there working, and they work in partnership with us in King House and we with them. We have the great tea rooms run by Dorothy. We have the library downstairs in King House, and we all work in unison with one another.
Yeah, and the farmers market is that's now 18. I think this year is the 18th year it's been in operation every Saturday.
Every Saturday morning, the farmers market is exposed there with all the beautiful stalls, organic food, jams, cakes, fish, poultry, beautiful flower arrangements, and of course, one cannot go to the country markets without having a visit to King House. So all work hand in hand.
Exactly, yeah. And there's also then the Harrington Studios. Is that what it's called?
The Harrington Studios.
What exactly? I believe like you can do some like for artists or maybe someone that's doing video editing. They could maybe use the facilities in there. That's what's? I was in there a couple of times, but is that the function of the room? Kind of like an artist studio or?
Correct. The 2 rooms there, the Harrington rooms, during the Arts Festival, they can be open if they're not occupied by a resident artist for display of art. But resident artists use that, as you have said, Carlo, and right inside the front gate.
Yeah. And in your view, Mary, what would you think the role King House plays today in the Boyle local community?
King House is, to me, it's the hub of Boyle because we have weddings in King House. We've after funeral get-togethers. We've book launches, book reviews, the Christmas craft fair, the Halloween extravaganza, the piano exams. A lot goes on in King House. You've actually to come and visit King House to realise the extent of the goings on in King House and the Boyle Civic Arts Collection. So King House is well recognised in the area and it's of significant value to Boyle and to attract people into the town.
Yeah, it's obviously taken over in latter years since the Royal Hotel has declined. It's become now kind of, as you said, maybe the focal point of town for weddings and launches of such, because when you don't have a hotel, of course, you need another venue, and King House has kind of bridged that gap.
Certainly. And caterers, we take in caterers for before or after meals. So that's of great significance. So we can host all the different events readily with minimal notice at sometimes.
And it's also interesting, I think, that the King family dynasty, if you'd like to call that, has lasted from the 1600s to, as we said, the mid-1950s. And it was prevalent during like poignant times in history. The High Kings, the clans, the chieftains, the famine, world wars, and the fight for independence. That they've lasted like through all that really significant history.
Correct.
Of our country. And so where can listeners find out more information about visiting King House or, support the ongoing preservation efforts that are probably there? Where can they find out more information?
You can visit our website, visitKinghouse.ie, to research our opening hours, to book a tour, to book a wedding event, to book book launch. Any of your bookings, we're readily available to accommodate you. And the telephone number is available there. Our opening hours.
Everything's there.
All is there available to you on visitKinghouse.ie.
So I need go no further then.
No further than that. Our call on foot. We'll be delighted to supply you with all the information and showcase the house if you have time.
Going down the road, Mary, in the future, what are your plans? Do you plan on being a tour guide and receptionist for much longer in King House? Or do you plan to put the feet up a little?
Well, I will be a tour guide and receptionist for as long as I can be, because my love of King House will be forever. Now, I know there's a time limit on that, but for as long as I can, I will be an ambassador for King House. I'm delighted to have it in our community and at our disposal. And for me, as a resident of the area, I will do my best to keep King House flying the flag forever.
Exactly. And before we finish, Mary, is there anything we haven't touched on that you'd like to maybe go over?
Something that's outstanding in my mind is the fact that Roscommon County Council had the vision to restore this house. And it's not as a car park as was originally intended. So we are the beneficiaries of this in our area, and we're able to stand tall and straight and expose it and promote it with the Boyle Abbey, with Lough Forest Park. And we're so gifted because in visiting the Boyle Abbey, you get the true history of the kings. First, they came to the Boyle Abbey, then King House, and then to Lough. So as I tell my visitors, really, you cannot have one without the other. So with the three at our disposal, it's of great benefit to Boyle.
That's perfect. Mary, you're an absolute asset, so you are to King House. I'm not the only person that says that. As you know, plenty of people absolutely enjoy your tours, your bubbly personality, your interesting conversation. And thank you very much for coming on to the Voices of Boyle.
Thank you, Carlo, and it's a pleasure being here.